Chapter 619 Looking for a companion while checking out the many different places. Zhouing glanced at the Gu family and left after ensuring they were safe. She didn't expect that King Rui and Zhou Huaiming had gone to a mother god temple to offer incense. What King Rui prayed for was for his residents to be safe. Zhou Huaiming instead prayed that all the border crossings would be peaceful this year. Additionally, Zhouing discovered that a few serious disaster-struck places, such as Pingyang Province, had already begun to run out of food. Fortunately, traveling through the river was finally possible. Grain merchants transported grain from all over the country to these places without caring about the quality of it. The situation was still stable after factoring in wild vegetables and stocks of dried vegetables. Seeing this, Zhouing sprinkled seeds around the barren lands through her inner space: perilla, dandelion, amaranth, and hemp vegetables. She also released a batch of wild ducks, eggs, fish, and shrimp into their river before leaving. After she was done, she picked another batch of strawberries and stored them. Woof, woof, a dog barked, and Zhouing turned her head to see Gu Chungrui crossing the river with Erzhuang. Zhouing smiled and waved her hand. When Erzhuang heard her call, he barked even louder and ran even faster. Zhouing threw a strawberry the size of a child's fist directly in front of it. The strawberry was promptly eaten by Erzhuang, who sprang up and ran to her side while wagging his tail. Zhouing saw this and gave him a plate of strawberries. When he lowered his head to eat the strawberries, Zhouing asked, "Rui, why is he here? Isn't he living comfortably over there? It's spring, so I think he's going into heat. He's barking at the cows and sheep daily, scaring them so much that they aren't eating enough. That's why I brought him with me. Bring him to the manor tomorrow and find a companion for him. It's better for him to live outside." "That's true. It'll be safer if there's a dog around too." Zhouing agreed and picked out a large plate of strawberries. "Let's go and eat these strawberries. They're sweet and tart." Gu Chungrui nodded and returned to the villa with her. After eating the strawberries, Gu Chungrui read his medical books while Zhouing washed the dirty clothes and bedding in the inner space. The next day, after the morning court session, Gu Chungrui had just left the palace gates when he bumped into Nigkong again. However, this time, King Kong wasn't here to persuade him. Instead, he asked, "Cousin, I'm wondering if you have some more tomatoes in your manor? Suji hasn't had an appetite recently, so I want to buy some for her to start her appetite. There really isn't any left. And as far as I know, the latest batch will be ready for harvest only in a month's time. I'm sure there's a reason for the lack of appetite. Eating some hawthorn is recommended if it is just ordinary stomach discomfort. That will have the best effect of boosting her appetite and helping her digest better. If she's pregnant, she's probably just craving preserved fruits like preserved plums." "Pregnant?" King Kong was stunned after hearing that and quickly remembered when Zhou Jiaying was pregnant. She had a big appetite but liked eating some strange things. Thinking of this, he was secretly happy but also knew that the later this matter spread, the better. He nodded and said, "I think I'm just worrying too much. All right, I will find a doctor to take a look. You sure have a caring relationship with your wife. I'll take my leave now." Gu Chungrui turned around and walked away after that. On the other end, after the Empress finished her breakfast, she checked the palace accounts. She pointed to Consort Shu's expenses and asked, "Mrs. Yu, what did Consort Shu do? Why did her expenses suddenly increase so much?" Chapter 620 The Reason Empress. According to this servant's knowledge, Consort Shu prepared a batch of tonics for Consort Kong, so she took 3 months of her allowance in advance. Advance allowance? When did the Prime Minister become so poor? Has anything major happened in the Prime Minister's residence recently? The Empress asked. Other than hearing that 7th young Master Su was struck by lightning, I haven't heard anything else. But 7th Su wasn't seriously injured. How could it affect the Su family's wealth? The Empress paused for a moment before continuing. Investigate this, but be careful in case it's a trap.
Yes.
At this point, Nanny Yu whispered, I have received reliable news that Consort Rui is really pregnant, and it's almost been 3 months. When the Empress heard this, jealousy flashed in her eyes. Her son was the eldest and the first to get married. But 5 to 6 years had passed, and neither the princess consort nor the little vixens under her were pregnant. On the contrary, the third and fourth princes had children one after another. No, she couldn't let them have children earlier than her son, especially the third prince. If he were to get a son first, the emperor would most likely be biased toward him. At that time, the third prince would take revenge for what happened back then, and she would be in a bad position. Thinking of this, a fierce look flashed across her eyes. Think of a way to get rid of it. Remember to be careful and not leave any evidence. Yes, I will arrange it now. Also, make arrangements for the fourth prince. Don't let them get pregnant again.
Yes.
Nanayu bowed and left. After she left, the more the empress thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. Even if her daughter-in-law could not give birth, what about the other women in her son's residence? Why was there no news of pregnancy from any of them? Thinking of this, she immediately got up and summoned Imperial Physician Chun, who specialized in gynecology, to accompany her to King Hu's residence. She called the women of King Hui over and said to Imperial Physician Chun, "They'll have to trouble you to check their pulses one by one and see what the reason is. Why haven't they gotten pregnant yet?" When the women heard this, they immediately became nervous. After that, they started to discuss softly, but the Empress' gaze quickly quieted them.
Yes.
Imperial Physician Chun took out a pad from his medicine box. He looked at Consort Hui and asked, "Consort Hui, the order?" "Let's start with me." Consort Hui Wangfei walked over and said. After saying that, she walked over and sat on the chair. She was so calm because she had found a doctor to check up on her before she got married. There was no problem with her body at all. In addition, there hadn't been a single child in the residence these past few years, so she had always thought that the problem was His Highness. This was also why she couldn't be bothered to fight for his attention. Today was the perfect opportunity to pass the news of His Highness' failure to the Empress so she wouldn't have to deal with her constant disdain. The room was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Only the sound of everyone's breathing could be heard. At the same time, the atmosphere was getting heavy. The concubines felt their legs go soft. A moment later, Imperial Physician Chan stopped checking and did not reply. Instead, he called a concubine over. After passing them one by one, Imperial Physician Chen's legs went soft, and he kneeled and said, "Empress, all the womenfolk in the residence of Prince Hui have been sterilized." So, after saying that, he directly kowtowed to the ground and dared not even raise his head. "What? What did you just say? Say it again?" the Empress asked in disbelief. Chapter 621 Deny. The group of women were dumbfounded when they heard that. What did he mean by sterilized? Was it what they thought it meant? When Consort Hui heard this, she felt her head buzz and could not hear anything else. All the womenfolk in the residence of King Hui have been sterilized. After Imperial Physician Chan stuttered, he didn't dare say another word. This matter was so severe. It was so severe that his head might fall. It was getting scary. After the Empress confirmed she had not misheard, she felt her vision darken and almost fainted. Fortunately, Nanayu quickly supported her. After a while, she returned to her senses and hurriedly said to Nanayu, "Inform all the guards to surround the entire place as soon as possible. Not even a fly is allowed to fly out. Also, inform the butler to bring over the roster of all the people in the residence." "Yes, please rest." After Nanayu finished speaking, she called a servant girl who was still in a daze beside Consort Hui over and told her to inform the butler of their orders. Meanwhile, she found the captain of the guards and gave him her orders. For the entire day, the whole residence was in chaos. However, under the Empress' ruthless methods, she finally found the mastermind through the residence doctor, King Kong. However, how could King Kong admit to such an incriminating thing? The Empress couldn't beat him to force him to confess, so she dragged him back to the palace and told the Emperor about it. Although the Emperor was already annoyed with King Hui, he was still his son. Cutting off his descendants was infuriating to hear. It was no wonder King Hui had no descendants, even after so many years. At this thought, he felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't dare to think more. He looked at King Kong and asked, "Tell me, did you do this?" From the Empress' expression of anger and despair, He already knew this was most likely true. However, he still had a glimmer of hope. He did not want his sons to act so inhumanly as to kill each other for the throne. Imperial father, I've been wronged. You know very well that the Empress has always been hostile toward my mother and me. King Kong replied aggrievedly. No matter what, he would not admit it. Otherwise, his father would definitely give up on him. Do you speak the truth, my son? The Emperor stood up and asked again.
Yes.
King Kong raised his head and said it firmly. How dare you not admit it? You're not a man. The Empress yelled angrily. Imperial Mother, if you want to convict me no matter what, you have to produce some evidence to convince us. Don't you think it's too far-fetched to condemn me with just a few words from a doctor? Most importantly, this crime is so great that I cannot bear taking the blame. Indeed. If you don't have the evidence, don't slander my son. Everyone knows what kind of life we're living. What if someone else framed us? Consort Shu walked in and said. Afterwards, she bowed to the Emperor. Greetings, Emperor. Long live the Emperor. The Emperor nodded, then waved his hand impatiently to ask her to stand to the side. The Emperor was troubled. He looked at the Empress and said, They'll give you 3 days to find evidence. Consort Shu and her son will be placed under house arrest at Weiyang Palace. If you find the evidence, then it's settled. If you can't find it, then stop this infighting. Understand? The Empress also knew that she was being impatient, so she could only nod and say, All right. At the same time, Consort Shu hurriedly shouted, Emperor, no. What if she fabricated evidence to frame my son? Do you think him a fatuous ruler? The Emperor slammed the dragon table and said unhappily. After that, he called Xiao Hung over and asked him to follow the Empress for her investigation personally. Chapter 622 The Sterilization Incident. Although the Empress was unwilling, she still left in a hurry with Xiao Hong to find evidence. However, when she passed by Consort Shu, her eyes flashed with viciousness. When Consort Shu saw this, she knew their real war had begun. Li, send both mother and son back to Weiyang Palace. After the Emperor finished speaking, he couldn't be bothered to pay any more attention to them. After they left, the Emperor remembered that since the birth of the 9th princess, no child had been born in the palace for more than 10 years. He had not taken it to heart before, but now he was concerned. When Eunuch Li returned, the Emperor sent him out again. He had him bring Imperial Physician Chan to the palace to conduct a general survey of the mistresses of the various palaces. Once the investigation was done, they all broke out in a cold sweat. All the favored concubines in the palace had been poisoned with sterilization drugs, which forced the Emperor to investigate this matter personally. Otherwise, he might even get drugged to death one day. In Weiyang Palace, when King Kong found out that the Emperor had sent people to conduct a general survey in the palace, he looked at Consort Shu in panic and asked, Mother, will he find out about us? Don't worry. Before we went to his study, I had already made arrangements. It won't trace back to us. Are you sure? I'm sure. You just have to insist that you don't know anything. The palace was in chaos, but Zhouing was in a good mood. She had brought Heir Zhuang to her manor to find a companion for him. After returning to the capital in the evening, Zhouing subconsciously spread her divine senses to the entire capital. When she saw all the women in King Hu's residence despairing and lamenting as if their husbands had died, she quickly learned the whole story and what had happened in the palace. After dinner, Zhouing returned to her interspace and told Gu Chungrui how King Hus and the Emperor's concubines were sterilized. Consort Shu and her son are really ruthless. They're ruthless, and they've been preparing for many years. They definitely have a backup plan. I just wonder who will be unlucky enough to take the blame. I don't think they could push it to King Rui, right? It's hard to say, but it might be 7th Su. To their disbelief, the Empress report and the Emperor's evidence pointed toward Princess Pingyang. The motive was revenge. She wanted to avenge the Empress for causing her to fall into a pond in the middle of winter and lose fertility. She was also taking revenge on the Emperor for disregarding her wishes and forcing her to marry into the Gu family. Brother Rui, do you think it's credible? Isn't this just slandering the dead? Zhou huffed angrily after receiving the news. Since all the evidence points to her, it means that Pingyang was involved somehow. Don't forget, Pingyang has been married to the Gu family for over 20 years but has never given birth to a child. There has never been any news of her getting pregnant. Therefore, it's not impossible for her to be involved in this. However, she's definitely not the mastermind, and it's likely that she had become a chess piece in Consort Shu's hands. Princess Pingyang is sure unlucky. She was a pawn from beginning to end. As long as they don't drag us into this, it's fine, Gu Qingrui replied. Zhou was speechless when she heard that. However, if they were really so shameless, she would not mind changing the dynasty sooner. The next day, during the morning court session, Gu Qingrui huddled in a corner as usual, listening to the reports. After finishing the important matter, Prime Minister Su stepped forward and reported, "Emperor, the sterilization incident is already known. We implore that you punish the culprit." Chapter 623 2 Steps Forward, 1 Step Back Culprit? Do you mean to ask me to open the coffin and desecrate the corpse? The emperor narrowed his eyes and stared at him. He was not stupid. Although all the evidence pointed to Pingyang, he knew the real culprit was Consort Shu. However, he could not find any evidence and could only silently end this matter and investigate it privately. He did not expect that this old man would try to shift the blame onto Gu Qingrui. While the emperor had used Gu Qingrui as a target to find a balance in the middle so that his 3 sons could restrain each other, he didn't want Gu Qingrui to take the blame for others. As expected, Prime Minister Su continued, "As the saying goes, the son will pay for the mother's debt. Although Princess Pingyang is dead, she has a son." Gu Qingrui only narrowed his eyes after hearing that and had no intention of speaking out. The emperor looked at Gu Qingrui and asked in a bad mood, "Gu Qingrui, what do you say?" "Everything is up to you, Emperor." Gu Qingrui stepped forward and bowed. "What if I dismiss you from your post?" "So be it. They'll return home and plant sweet potatoes." Moreover, this official position was originally added to spread the sweet potato to the people as soon as possible. "Now that the mission has been completed, I will leave." After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he bowed and waited for his answer. When the emperor heard him say this, he immediately remembered the reluctance on Gu Qingrui's face when he had given him an official position. He originally thought that Gu Qingrui was trying to act arrogant, but his reluctance seemed true after all. Prime Minister Su was also dumbfounded. He was trying to use Gu Qingrui to lure out the power King Rui had left in the capital so that he could eliminate it and make a move on Consort Rui. Who would have thought Gu Qingrui didn't even care about his position in court, nor did he intend to ask King Rui for help. What was his next step here? For a moment, everyone looked at Gu Qingrui as if they were looking at a monster. King An coughed dryly and said, "Qingrui, don't act on impulse." The Minister of Works immediately agreed. "That's right, Qingrui. You've just made some achievements and have a bright future ahead of you. You can't give up now." "I'm not acting on impulse. I've already taught what I should teach, and the rest will need a great deal of time to continue researching. There won't be any results for a while. Now that Prime Minister Su has mentioned the matter of the son paying the mother's debt, I will take the opportunity to withdraw from the court and return home to be a commoner." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone looked at Prime Minister Su with a strange gaze. The two had no grudges against each other, so why was Prime Minister Su forcing Gu Qingrui to resign and return to his hometown? Prime Minister Su received the gazes of the people and felt wronged. This was not his intention. A third-grade official is not a minor position. Don't you miss it? King Xian looked at Gu Qingrui curiously and asked, "Glory and wealth are just fleeting clouds. This humble official feels that living freely, living by oneself, is true happiness. Moreover, the higher the position, the greater the responsibility and the greater the pressure. As a scholar, my abilities are limited." The emperor didn't care if Gu Qingrui's words were sincere or not, but his move of 2 steps forward and 1 step back was used beautifully. Now, the court was on his side. The emperor stopped everyone and said, "All right, let's stop here. Pingyang's matter has nothing to do with him, and there's no need to involve him. As for your resignation, forget it. But it's true. I can see that there's nothing much to report every time you come to court. In the future, they'll give you a normal salary, and you just have to continue your agriculture research. You don't have to attend the morning court every day. Gu Chungrui was stunned by the verdict. Although it was a pity he didn't get to return to the countryside, he had at least gained something. He immediately went forward to thank the emperor. Prime Minister Su was unwilling to accept this abrupt end to his plans, but since the emperor had already decided, he couldn't bring it up again. Chapter 624 Unsafe. After the court session, Gu Chungrui greeted everyone goodbye and then ran away happily. King An looked at him, shook his head, and laughed. This kid is already of age, but he still has the temperament of a child. It's rare for someone to not care about fame and fortune. King Xian nodded. Honestly, he did not have any memorable impressions of Gu Chungrui, but Gu Shengrui's words today made him admire him a little more. He was clear-headed, not arrogant, and quite smart. After Gu Chungrui returned home, he told Zhouing about how Prime Minister Su had made things difficult for him in court and the outcome. Babe, I'm finally free. Zhouing was surprised when she heard this, as she knew the emperor had ordered them to stay in the capital to use them. She didn't expect that he would protect them. Although his protection wasn't out of pure intention, it saved them a lot of trouble for the time being. Gu Chungrui added, "Let's go to the manor. After we're done here, we'll go back to our hometown and reopen our restaurant there." Sure. Oh, right. We also have to plant chili and cumin here, especially cumin. Otherwise, there would not be enough for when our restaurants open. No problem. We will clear a piece of land and plant those. The two of them continued discussing their plans, and it was determined that Gu Chungrui would be in charge of running back and forth while Zhouing dealt with the issues at the residence as quickly as possible. They would only go to the manor together when they finished. Conversely, Prime Minister Su's expression did not look so good. He never thought that Gu Chungrui, who was usually inconspicuous and had no sense of existence, would be so great at scheming. Gu Shengrui's 2 steps forward and 1 step backward had placed him in a position where he could not advance or retreat. He had vastly underestimated Gu Chungrui. Right, how could a person whom King Rui took a fancy to and protected be an ordinary person? Father, what's wrong? Did things not go well today? 7th Su walked in and asked. Yes, we underestimated the enemy. Gu Chungrui is much more cunning than we thought. Prime Minister Su replied. Oh, what happened? 7th Su asked in confusion. Gu Chungrui had some talent and skills, but in terms of politics, he couldn't compete with his father, who had spent half his life at the imperial court. Prime Minister Su didn't hide anything from him and told him what had happened in the imperial court. 7th Su replied thoughtfully, I feel that the emperor didn't completely believe the Empress result. Or rather, he did not believe it at all. Otherwise, he would not have let Gu Chungrui off so calmly. Prime Minister Su nodded and said solemnly, the emperor is not a simple man, and he naturally won't believe everything. As long as he can't get hold of any material evidence, we're fine. So, we have to speed up. Otherwise, I'm afraid. King Hui was in a dire state. As much of his dirty laundry had been exposed recently, the emperor had probably given him up. Unless they forced him to abdicate, it was impossible for King Hui to ascend the throne. As for the sterilization incident, the emperor was definitely holding a grudge inwardly. King Kong wasn't so safe either. On the other hand, King Rui's military achievements over the years were plentiful. Promoting sweet potatoes to the masses was also a merit worth praising for 1,000 years or more. The key was that there was no negative news surrounding him. As for the 7th prince, to be honest, he was still too inexperienced. Without 5 or 6 years, he couldn't achieve anything. Therefore, their biggest enemy was King Rui. This was also the reason why he suddenly attacked Gu Chungrui in court. However, Father, are you saying that the emperor is likely to be biased toward King Rui? 7th Su asked in disbelief. However, he shook his head and said, there's no way. Back then, in order to suppress the Zhou family, the emperor framed them many times. How can King Rui not hate him? Chapter 625 Discovery. You're still too inexperienced. Back then, the true culprits were the Empress, the Marquis of Dingon, and us, who also helped secretly. Our actions went along with the emperor's wishes, so the emperor followed the flow. Moreover, if the emperor gave the throne to King Rui, do you think the Zhou family or King Rui would still hold onto a grudge? I see. Yes, but we still have to guard against the empress. She is a poisonous snake. It will be bad if she targets us. Seventh Su nodded and ate breakfast with his father. He ordered Su Qing, his follower, to find the servant in King Rui's residence. He ordered the servant to keep an eye on anyone coming and going from the residence. At the same time, he also checked the forces King Rui left in the capital. As for the empress, who everyone was worried about, she was sick and could not even get up from her bed. But Marquis Dingon started to move after receiving the news. The first target was Gu Chungrui and his wife. No matter what, Princess Pingyang had participated in the sterilization incident, so she was not wronged. At the same time, they also sent people to attack the fourth prince's wife, and they discovered that Consort Kong was pregnant. Thus, he changed his strategy and instigated a fight between the two concubines. Zhouing did not know about this. Over the past 2 days, while giving orders to Mother Qiu and her husband, she had not relaxed her surveillance on Xiaxiang. Finally, on the second day's afternoon, she discovered something unusual. Zhouing noticed that Xiaxiang had asked for leave to leave the residence, and she immediately spread out her divine senses to follow her. She saw that Xiaxiang had entered a relatively well-off small courtyard north of the city. After entering, she greeted an old woman sitting in a rocking chair in the courtyard, saying, "Granny Lu, Ziying is here to report. Go in. The leader is waiting inside." The old woman waved her hand. Seeing this, Xiaxiang immediately entered the room and bowed. "Leader, sit down. They didn't suspect you, did they?" A woman in her 40s turned around and asked.
Not yet.
"Any gains?" "Yes, the husband and wife are very cautious. They never let anyone enter their master bedroom. They wouldn't even let us get close to the bedroom. However, they are kind to the servants, so the residence was still relatively peaceful. They have planned to stay in their manor for farming activities for the next 2 days, and they mentioned they would only return after the grain festival. Anything else?" "No, the couple's diet is very complicated. In addition, because of the limited ingredients now, they would eat anything available." "How is their relationship?" "Very good. The best this servant has ever seen. Whether it is speaking or action, they are very tacit with each other. However, Lord Gu has always been concerned about the matters of the manor and rarely cares about the residents." "Zhouing didn't take the medicine, did she?" "No, by the way, Zhouing practices martial arts with a servant girl named Shizhu every morning and evening. According to my observation, she's not weak. Do you think you're a match for her?" "It's hard to say. I'm good at using swords, but Zhouing excels in close combat." "How confident are you if I order you to seduce Gu Chungrui?" Xiaxiang paused for a moment after hearing that. She recalled the few times she had met Gu Chungrui and remembered that he had completely ignored her. She replied reluctantly, 20% confident. The leader raised her head and looked at her in surprise. Although Xiaxiang was not very beautiful, she was delicate and charming. Her figure was captivating, and she was overall a beauty. The leader did not expect her to reply with such low confidence in seducing Gu Chungrui. It seemed that the Gu couple's relationship was unimaginably good. "Let's give it a try. If it doesn't work, you still have to become Zhou Ying's confidant as soon as possible." "Is there a mission?" Xiaxiang's eyes lit up as she asked. Chapter 626 Intelligence Network. Have you forgotten the rules? The leader raised her head and looked at her coldly. "I'm sorry. I've crossed the line." "All right, go back. Before you complete the infiltration mission, just in case, don't come over again." "Yes, I will take my leave." Xiaxiang bowed, turned around, and left the courtyard. However, Zhouing did not leave. Instead, she waited a while and left after confirming that the leader wasn't contacting the mastermind. The organization that Xiaxiang belonged to was very large. Zhouing wondered who the person behind it was. After dinner, Zhouing looked at the small courtyard again when Gu Chungrui was bathing. This time, there was only the old granny guarding the door. The young woman was nowhere to be found. However, Zhouing did not care about her whereabouts. Instead, she began a carpet search of the small courtyard. She found 2 books, a few letters, and a box of silver in a secret compartment. She took the letters and the 2 books into her inner space. After Gu Chungrui returned, she asked him to keep a lookout while she entered her interspace and looked at the goods. The 2 books were rosters, which recorded the name, gender, residence, and current position of their spies. There were more than 100 people in the 2 books. However, several residences belonged to the same masters, so not many people were spied on. Zhouing went straight into her study room in the villa, scanned the 2 books, and saved them onto her computer. She opened the letters, glanced at them, and noticed they were filled with information about ongoing missions. She scanned it into the computer again. After she was done, she folded them back and put them back in their original place through her inner space before leaving. Did something happen? Gu Chungrui asked when he saw her coming out. I guess so. We'll take a bath first. Let's talk in the inner space. She then turned around and walked out of the bedroom, asking Niu Lirong to prepare hot water for her bath. After he was done, she asked him to leave. She drank a cup of white wine after taking her bath. After ensuring no one was in the courtyard, she brought Gu Chungrui into her inner space. Then, she told him about her discovery today. There are only 3 possibilities: King Hui, King Kong, and the Emperor. We don't know which side it is, so let's look at the content we got. With this information, we can know who it is. Gu Chungrui entered the study room of the villa with her. After that, they printed everything out and read it all. Gu Chungrui focused on the 3 recent missions. The first was to confirm if Consort Rui was pregnant, which a spy in Lord Sun's residence confirmed. The next task was to get rid of Sun Myok's child. The last was to kill King Kang's daughter, but it quickly became a quest to sow discord between the main and secondary consorts. There were also different missions in the various manners, all aimed at controlling and sowing discord between the masters. After Gu Chungrui finished reading it, he said, "It's most likely the Empress people or the Marquis of Dingon. I didn't expect their intelligence network to be this massive. No wonder they dared to be so arrogant. Their plans are all so sinister. There's no difference between them and Consort Shu and the others. Also, this means Consort Shu and the others also had an equally large intelligence network. Otherwise, how could they contend with the Empress? Both of them are pot calling the kettle black. How could the wife of an emperor be simple?" Gu Chungrui turned his head and asked, "Do you think we should remind Sun Miaoka?" Chapter 627 Prince Hugh's Return. Well, just remind Uncle Feng. After all, she does not have as much control over the people in the residence as he does. Zhouing asked troubledly, "But how do we remind him? We can't just go and tell him, right? How do we explain the source of our news?" "We'll go and tell him, and just say that it's a reminder. Uncle Feng isn't stupid. He's investigating everything that moves now." Gu Chungrui answered, "All right, then you can go over tomorrow morning." After that, Zhouing checked the situation in various places through her inner space. Once she was done, she looked at King Rui's residence and found Sun Myok's personal maid, Qing Mei. She was a spy on the rooster. Qing Mei was on night duty. Zhouing withdrew after searching her body and confirming that there were no dangerous things. The next morning, Gu Chungrui finished his breakfast and turned to King Rui's residence. He reminded Uncle Feng of some things he should take precautions about and left. He pointed out a few areas, such as drugs, cold food, blood circulation food, tripping and falling, and also emphasized catmint. Uncle Feng, who was originally full of confidence, felt that he had been careless after hearing Gu Chengrui's words. Thus, he didn't bother with the accounts and quietly rearranged the people around the residence. One rainy day, Qing Mei was about to apply oil to Sun Myok's shoes when Qing Tao caught her. Uncle Feng wanted to arrest Qing Mei, but she bit a poison sac in her mouth and committed suicide. Uncle Feng did not let out a sigh of relief and got even more vigilant. He also sent a letter to King Rui. 3 days later, after Zhouing taught Niu Delhi how to keep tabs on their accounts, the people in the residence were finally relieved. Just as she was about to bring Shizhu and Xiaxiang to her manor, King Hui returned to the capital. Zhouing glanced at King Hui. He was bald at the moment, and his head had some burn scars. Looking at his solemn expression, she knew that he already knew what had happened in the capital during this period of time. Zhouing didn't pay much attention to him and rushed straight to her manor. When they arrived at the manor, Zhouing got out of the carriage and walked into the fields with Shizhu and Xiaxiang. Xiaxiang saw this and asked in surprise, "Mistress, are you really going to head into the fields?" "Yeep. Planting melons and beans after the rainy season will reduce production if we miss this solar term. Can't you see that my husband is also planting watermelon seedlings in the field? Let's just help out as much as we can." Zhouing quickened her pace as she said that. When Shizhu saw this, she immediately followed. Xiaxiang was put in a difficult position. Although she was a servant and had done heavy work before, it was her first time working under the sun. She couldn't understand why Zhouing, the wife of a third-grade official, had to go down to the fields to suffer. However, no matter how unwilling she was, she followed for her mission's sake. Gu Chungrui saw her coming over and stood up. "Why aren't you wearing a straw hat?" "It's okay. They'll head back when it's hot." "What are you planting now?" "Watermelon and pumpkins. Let's do it together." After Zhouing finished speaking, she looked at Shizhu and Xiaxiang and said, "If the two of you don't know how to plant them, help me bring over the watermelon seedlings." "Got it, mistress," Shizhu responded, "and she want to get them." Xiaxiang saw that some women were helping water the watermelons and felt it was quite easy. She suggested, "Mistress, I'll help you water the seedlings." "All right, do whatever you want." Zhouing responded and lowered her head to plant the watermelon seedlings. After Xiaxiang walked away, Zhouing whispered to Gu Chungrui, "When we came out today, we bumped into King Hui, who had returned to the capital. I stole a glance and saw he was bald and still had some burns on his head. I wonder if he would be able to grow back his hair." Chapter 628 Xiao Zheng. He deserved it. It's understandable that they fight each other since they were born in the royal family. It's also understandable that they eradicated the Gu family back then. After all, Pingyang stood on the wrong side. But he shouldn't have forced people to take sides. Also, it's wrong to kill them and find someone to replace them if they disagree. This time, it got even more outrageous. He used the lives of civilians as a bargaining chip, and I don't think it could be justified. Kings fight, and the peasants suffer. Zhouing shook her head. Next, the two planted the watermelon seedlings together and stopped when it was almost noon. The two of them called Xiaxiang and Shizhu back. "Hello, Lord Gu, Madam Gu." At this moment, a young man in his 20s ran over and greeted them with a smile. Gu Chungrui saw this and introduced him. "This is Xiao Zheng, who was sent by King Kong to learn greenhouse technology. He even helped us with a lot of farm work." "Is that so? It must be really hard on you." "You're too polite, madam. In any case, it's learning to do more." When Xiaozheng said this, he looked at Zhouing with admiration and added, "It's just that I didn't expect Madame Gu to be able to do farm work. I'm amazed. Didn't we stay in the countryside for more than 3 years? Otherwise, how could we cultivate those sweet potatoes?" "That's right. I'm really stupid for not thinking of this." "That's normal. No one can cover everything. By the way, what did you do before you came here?" "I used to grow vegetables in my manor. When I heard that King Kong was looking for someone to learn about building a new greenhouse, my father recommended me." "Your father must be King Kang's trusted aide." "Oh, no. He's just the head of the Hot Spring Manor." "That's also pretty good." "Oh, right. How many people are there in your family?" "How old are you?" Zhouing kept asking questions as they walked, not giving him a chance to ask anything. At the same time, she obtained a lot of information about him. Of course, he did not dare say anything more than he could. When they reached the manor, Xiao Zheng turned around and returned to the house where he was staying. Meanwhile, Zhou Ying and the others returned to their courtyard. Mrs. Wu was picking vegetables and stood up and bowed to them before turning to Shizu. "Shizhu, there's hot water on the stove. Use as you like." "Got it. After I'm done, they'll help you cook." Shizhu then turned around and went to the kitchen. Xiaxiang followed her in as well. Zhou Ying and Gu Chungrui sat in the courtyard under the tree's shade. The weather wasn't particularly hot yet, so they cooled down quickly when they reached the shade. Soon, Shizhu and Xiaxiang finished washing their hands, bringing out a warm water basin. After the couple washed up, they entered their house. After entering the bedroom, Gu Chengrui sat on the chair and said, "Babe, take out a few strawberries. My throat is as dry as the desert." "Watch the door," Zhouing reminded him and flashed into her interspace. She picked some big strawberries, washed them, and put them on the table. Gu Chengrui took one and put it in her mouth. "The sun is even hotter in the afternoon, so don't go into the fields. Why don't you cook a few dishes later and let Shinhe and the others come over for a gathering?" They haven't returned yet? No. Chunhee has taken a liking to farming after staying so long. Some time ago, I suggested that deep plowing and redding manure could increase harvesting production, and he followed suit. It looks like he's a reliable person. You should guide him well, as ITLL make a great contribution if he can also excel in agricultural research. Chapter 629 Fishing. I had the same idea, so I didn't say anything when he wanted me to stay. "Oh, what do you think about matchmaking Xiaozheng and Xiaxiang?" Gu Chengrui asked. "At the very least, one of them must have the intention. Otherwise, if we force them, it would be troublesome for them to join forces to deal with us." Zhouing replied, "Let's wait and see. I'm really annoyed with Xiaozheng. He's always looking for something to talk to me about, and he's like a sticky candy that I can't get rid of no matter how hard I try. Why don't you try to get him to talk and reveal more information? He doesn't have that much value, and I'm too lazy to spend that effort." When Gu Chengrui said this, he paused and added, "Oh right, the Liu and Yao family's greenhouse vegetables should be ready in half a month. They want to sell their vegetables through our connections. What do you think?" "Sure, it's just a matter of connecting them. Anyway, the restaurant has opened up, and we won't be selling vegetables anymore." "All right, they'll help them pull the strings." In the afternoon, after dinner, Zhouing asked for a fishing net with a pole from Headfong. Then, she took Shizhu to the river to catch some fish. When they reached the riverside, Shizhu walked back and forth and said, "Mistress, there are not as many fish here as there are in the manor over there. There are a lot of people here, and there aren't many people around there. Naturally, there's more fish there." As Zhouing said this, she threw the fishing net to her and said, "Why don't you give it a try?" "All right." Shizhu took the fishing net and excitedly started to get to work by the river. As for Zhouing, she walked around the vicinity. Because there were paddy fields nearby, she soon found a lot of eels and loaches. She took a bucket and searched for the eels with her divine senses, and she soon caught half a bucket in a short while. By the time she returned, Shizhu had already caught 3 small fish the size of her palm. When she saw Zhouing coming over, she smiled awkwardly and said, "Mistress, I'm afraid we won't be able to eat fish for dinner tonight. The fish here are too small." "Is that so? Let me try." After Zhouing finished speaking, she took over the fishing net. However, she did not throw it out immediately and instead took a flour cake from her pocket and fixed it to the net with a rope. When Shizhu saw this, she said sadly, "Mistress, you're cheating. This is common sense. This isn't a pond, so how can you catch fish without bait?" Zhouing shook her head. After that, she ignored her and scanned the water with her divine sense. In a short while, there were fish that smelled the bait and swam over. Zhouing immediately caught 2 big fish and a few small fish in her fishing net. As soon as the fish entered, Zhouing quickly shook the net. When the fish fainted, she promptly pulled them out of the water. She did not expect one of the big fish to run away still, leaving only the silver carp, which she wasn't a fan of. However, Shizhu still exclaimed, "Wow, mistress, you're really amazing. Here, give it a try yourself." "Sure," Shizhu responded, immediately throwing the caught fish in a bucket. She picked up the net again and threw it into the river. At this time, Zhouing saw a black fish weighing 4 to 5 pounds swim past and used her divine senses to chase it into the net. After Shizhu felt the weight in the net, she immediately pulled it up. The fish was about to escape, so Zhouing had to use her divine sense to attack it. The black fish rolled twice, and by the time it reacted, it had already come ashore. "What a big fish! No wonder the net was so heavy," Shizhu exclaimed, and immediately put the fish into the bucket. "All right, It's enough for dinner tonight. Let's go back. Zhouing concluded and picked up the bucket, returning to where they came from. Shizhu immediately carried the net and followed happily. Chapter 630 Guidance. When they returned, Mrs. Wu and Xiaoxiang had already prepared a few dishes. Zhouing made another 6 dishes. Braised silver carp, black fish with pickled vegetables, braised eel with green garlic sprouts, spiced eggplant bun, shredded sweet potato, and cold sweet potato leaves. As for the staple food, it was steamed rice. Once the dishes were out of the pot, Xiaoxiang sniffed and said, "Mistress, these dishes really smell delicious." As expected of a restaurant owner. "Yeep, but you entered our residence too late. The dishes that mistress cooks during the new year are the truly delicious ones." The pig's offal and intestines were so fragrant that people wanted to eat more after a bite. But pig intestines are so dirty. Can they be eaten? Of course, it's no worse than meat after it's cleaned. I love them, especially the spicy ones. Just thinking about it makes me drool. You gluttonous cat. If you want to eat, then learn to cook. I guarantee that you can eat whenever you want. Are the guys back yet? Zhouing asked after teasing Shizhu. They're back and already drinking tea in the room. Let me know that it's time to eat. Zhouing loaded the plate as she said that. Other than the braised carp, which she couldn't split, she left a small portion of the rest for Shizhu and the other 2 women. After the dishes were served, Chunhee walked over and asked, "Madam, did we disturb you?" "Don't say that. Since you're following Qingrui, shouldn't we take care of you?" Zhouing asked as she handed the bowls and chopsticks to them. Yes, hurry up and sit down. You've lost a lot of weight since you came over. Eat as much as you can today." Gu Qingrui hurriedly invited them to sit down. At the same time, he poured a glass of wine for each of them. "We thank you too for your hospitality." Headfong smiled. "Hurry up and start eating. Don't blame us if you fall behind. And don't eat your fill." Zhouing urged them and picked up an eggplant bun for Gu Qingrui, which was difficult for him to reach. She also picked up one for herself and started eating. Seeing this, Chen He and the others naturally didn't stand on ceremony and reached their chopsticks to the fish. After the meal, Chen He and the others stayed behind to discuss farming ideas with Gu Qingrui. Gu Qingrui did not hide anything and told them the general direction of agricultural development. "You mean we can breed new species through crossbreeding?" Chen He's eyes lit up. "Yes, the most common type is melons. One year, I planted a gourd and a loofah together and was surprised to see them strung together. The loofah produced was massively different from others and tasted extraordinarily bitter. Although it was a failed example, it also means crossbreeding might work as long as it's similar plants. For example, wolves and dogs could also be crossbred. The puppies from such a lineage would usually be full of wolf characteristics, but if they were trained from a young age, it would be much easier to tame them than wild wolves. There are also donkeys and horses. Although the mules born this way are infertile, they still have their specialties, right? This is just a general direction. We can give it a try, and maybe we can cultivate something good. Let's try. Chunhee nodded thoughtfully. He quickly asked, "Oh right, Lord Gu, can I have a few melon seedlings? I want to try crossbreeding them with the loofah seeds." "Sure, but you don't necessarily have to plant all of them together. Melon flowers are divided into male and female flowers, so based on this, we can selectively choose a pair to crossbreed. Also, I think it's best to find wild ones to crossbreed. This can improve the quality of melons." Chapter 631 Testing Wild Ones. Are there wild winter melons around? There should be. Otherwise, where would our winter melon seeds come from? Weren't they found in the wild and farmed? But it might not be easy to find. There's also wheat. I've seen wild wheat before, and we can try crossbreeding them. However, this is a long-term and arduous task, and we must persevere. Chen He heard that and immediately found his direction. At the same time, he also understood that this was indeed a difficult task, as it wasn't easy to find wild crops to crossbreed with. He felt it was worth it because if they could increase harvest production, how many people's food problems could be solved? He nodded and said, "I understand. I hope you can persevere until a fruitful result. Gu Chengrui nodded. After chatting for a while longer, Qin He and the others took their leave. Once the couple washed up, they returned to their bedroom. After entering, they locked the door and entered the inner space. On the other hand, Shizhu and Xiaxiang could only sleep in one room due to the limited number of rooms. After lying down, Xiaxiang asked, Sister Shizhu, has the mistress always headed into the fields or cooked personally? It depends. For example, she will go to the fields today to help plant the seedlings, as it is the solar term. Also, today was a treat. Mrs. Wu's cooking is fine for our daily meals, but it's not presentable for an occasion. This is why mistress had no choice but to cook herself. I see. You're blessed to be able to enter the Gu residence. Although mistress is strict, but as long as you don't make any mistakes, she's very good to us servants. Shizhu asked, Oh right, aren't you from the south? I don't hear any obvious accent in your words. It's mainly because we live in a residence. For convenience, our masters and mistresses usually require us to speak in the proper dialect. Therefore, everyone must learn the official dialect before we can be sold as servants. After entering the residence, some servants still could not change their accents and could only do rough work for the rest of their lives. Didn't Sister Shizhu walk the same path? Xiaxiang asked. No, I've been performing on the streets in the north since I was young, so my accent has been like this since I was young. Performing? Yes, juggling and some martial arts. It's with these martial arts that I obtained mistress appreciation. I see. What does mistress like to eat the most? Why are you asking this? Shizhu immediately became vigilant. There was nothing to hide if it was a hobby that did not matter, and she could openly tell her. However, some preferences, especially those for imported undies, must not be exposed. Otherwise, it would be easy to bring trouble to mistress. Xiaxiang was shocked by her vigilance. It's nothing. I just want to learn to cook her favorite dish so I can cook for mistress in the future. Xiaxiang had seen Shizhu being careless over the past few days and did not expect her to be so vigilant regarding Zhouing. She was too careless. Shizhu couldn't figure out her intentions for a moment, so she could only respond, That's true. I should also take the time to learn more about cooking, but I don't know what she prefers other than that she doesn't like to eat coarse food. For example, mistress doesn't like to eat noodles made from coarse and mixed flour. The two women tested each other, but neither of them told the truth. Finally, they fell asleep as they spoke. After Zhouing entered her interspace, she checked the situation on the southern riverbank. Ziyin was now in charge of the embankment, and although they were still working day and night, he did not mistreat the laborers. After confirming that the construction was also made with strong and sturdy materials, only then did Zhouing withdraw with ease. Chapter 632, ready to act after that. Zhouing went to King Rui's residence to check on Gu Wanning. After confirming that Gu Wanning was safe, she also took a look at Gu Chenglin. She did not expect to encounter him being ridiculed as an orphan. Gu Chenglin retorted, When you laugh at me, you should think about yourself first. At least I have my sister, cousin, and cousin-in-law who love us. But do you have anyone who loves you? Especially you, Suani. I heard you and your mother were bullied and beaten by the main wife. How dare you laugh at me? And you, Sun Jingyang, you're just like me back then. Your father doesn't love you, and your stepmother is spoiling you rotten. What's there to be proud of? I still have a sister who dotes on me, but you don't even have a biological brother or sister. Gu Chenglin, you're looking for a beating. Sun Zhengyang raised his hand and was about to punch him. Suani was aggravated, and now that he had been exposed in public, he also rushed up to beat him up. When the others saw this, some hid and ran out to seek the discipline teacher, but no one came forward to stop the fight. Seeing that the three of them were about to fight, Zhouing immediately struck down the weakest lightning bolt she could. The thunder jolted the three kids, especially Gu Chenglin. After all, he had seen people struck down by lightning with his own eyes. Sun Zhengyang and Suani looked at each other and calmed down. Seeing this, Zhouing retreated with satisfaction. It seemed that the prestige of the mother god had been deeply rooted in the capital. She went to the palace and knew the Empress had seen King Hu's appearance after being struck by lightning. It was obvious since her illness had worsened. She even arranged for 2 imperial physicians to wait outside at any time. Finally, she looked at King Hu's residence. At this moment, it was frighteningly quiet, and King Hui was getting briefed in detail about everything that had happened in the capital by a few strategists. Just as Zhou was about to leave, she suddenly heard King Hui say, "My 4th brother is living too happily. It seems that I was too kind to him in the past. Master, it's not a good time to make a move on King Kong. Otherwise, the Emperor might completely abandon us." Abandon us? I'm already imprisoned. Do you think he will willingly pass the throne to me? King Hui snorted coldly. Since Lord Zhao was detained in the capital, he knew that the matter of his replacing government officials was exposed. Sure enough, it had only been a few months, and Pingyang province had already been taken down. It was only a matter of time before the Emperor took back other places, so he had to act quickly. Once the strategists heard this, they looked at each other and lowered their heads. It was obvious that they agreed with what he said. "All right, you all can head back for now. Tomorrow, after I meet my uncle, we'll decide on a plan." King Hui waved his hand and chased them out. Zhou waited for a while more. When she saw that King Hui had started writing a letter to the Marquis of Dingon, she went forward to look. She was surprised to see him asking for a poison buck. She immediately understood something and quickly retreated. Gu Chengrue returned after finishing his work and saw her sitting outside the storeroom in a daze. He went forward to rub her hair. "What are you thinking about? If I don't know better, I would think that you're in a meditative state." Zhou did not hide it from him and told him about King Hu's decision to rebel. He had no other choice. If it weren't for the fact that the Emperor found out about the sterilization incident and pitted the mother and son, it wouldn't be as simple as imprisonment. It's all his own doing. One can't be without a bottom line. I just did not expect that he would really kill his father for the throne's sake. Are you going to stop it? Zhou shook her head and said, "From my memory, I know Mother God will provide disaster relief to save the people. However, she has never participated in the change of dynasties. We helped the Emperor before because we hoped he would punish the evil as soon as possible. We can't get too involved." Chapter 633 Ambush. Sure, let's not worry about it. Just protect the people we should protect and let them fight among themselves. Gu Chengrue pulled her up after he finished speaking. The couple packed what they needed and returned to their villa for a vegetable salad and a plate of steamed prawns. After enjoying their meal, the two of them left the inner space. Following that, the two planted melon seedlings and cumin across 100 acres of their manor. Besides checking on Gu Wanning and Gu Qinglin, Zhou paid little attention to anything else after that. About 10 days later, Zhou used the name of Mother God to take out a batch of lucerne, bamboo grass, peanuts, soybeans, and all kinds of vegetable seeds suitable for growing in alkali-type soil. She also took out some apple and grape saplings. The apple seedlings were Macintosh and Honeycrisp seedlings. The grape seedlings were Cabernet Sauvignon, suitable for winemaking, and Giant Mountain and Midnight Beauty, which were more suitable for eating. They were transported to the new manor. First, they planted a row of grapes along the side of the mountain, and apple seedlings separated each type of grape. The rest were handed over to Head Fong, as there wasn't any hurry. They were in a hurry to return to the capital because they planned to return to their hometown to make arrangements while they still had time. Unexpectedly, when they passed by a forest, they were suddenly stopped by 10 masked men in black. Seeing this, Lin Etienne stopped the carriage and questioned them. "Who are you? How dare you touch an official's carriage? We're someone who wants your life." After the leader finished speaking, he slashed over with his sword. Lin Etienne drew his sword and met the attacker. Zhou, who had heard the commotion, knew the visitor had ill intentions. She took a crossbow from her space and handed it to Gu Chengrue, who was about to leave with the sword. "There is a poison arrow strung to this crossbow." Gu Chengrue nodded and took it out of the carriage. He happened to see someone sneaking up on Lin Etienne, so he shot at him. The attacker turned his head, instantly fell to the ground, and died. When Gu Chengrue saw this, he immediately raised his sword and joined the battle. He did not have to dodge when facing these people because he had learned sword techniques from Manager Liu's subordinates before. Instead, he fought head-on with them. If someone ambushed him, he would not retreat, but instead shoot an arrow over, killing the ambusher instantly. The leader, who had fought to a draw with him, was deeply shocked. Didn't they say he only knew a little martial arts? How could he know the sword techniques from the battlefield imbued with killing intent? On the other end, once Gu Changrui left, Zhou took out a crossbow and a bottle of pepper spray. She spread out her divine senses and walked out. However, before she could get out of the car, she saw someone flying over her head with a rope and kicking the carriage simultaneously. Zhou saw this and returned to the carriage. When she looked up, she saw a man in black walking over from the top of the carriage. When he came near, Zhou shot an arrow and jumped out of the carriage. That person was quick. Seeing that things were not looking good, he immediately let go and rolled to the ground. At this moment, someone quietly came to Zhou Ying's side and wanted to sneak in an attack. She turned her head and smiled as she pressed down on the pepper spray. The man was caught off guard, and his eyes were hit. He screamed and hugged his head as he retreated. When Shizhu rushed over and saw this, she raised the stick in her hand and smashed it against his head. Although the man dodged it agilely, he tripped over a tree root and fell to the ground. Zhou saw this and shot another arrow. After a moment, he stopped breathing. The person who had rolled on the ground earlier had rushed over, but Shizhu immediately picked up a sword on the ground and rolled over to meet him. At the same time, she shouted, "Mistress, be careful." Chapter 634. Robbing the dead. Zhou Ying had already noticed the attack, and Xiaoxiang had rushed over, wanting to block the attack for her. She knew Xiaoxiang's goal, so how could she let her get what she wanted? Otherwise, she would be at a loss if Xiaoxiang used this life-saving grace to threaten her. Therefore, Zhou Ying deliberately turned to block Xiaoxiang's way and quickly pressed down on the pepper spray. It was not difficult for the man in black to guess from his companion's reaction that this thing hurt his eyes. He immediately closed his eyes and dodged to the side. Zhou Ying took advantage of the moment he closed his eyes and shot an arrow. Another man in black was dead. Zhou Ying saw this and said to Xiaoxiang, "Take his sword to protect yourself." "Oh." Xiaoxiang immediately picked up the knife and formed a three-person formation with Zhou Ying and Shizhu. When the attackers saw this, they did not dare to approach one by one. Instead, two of them surrounded them from the left and right. However, before they could do anything, someone shouted, "Retreat!" After the men in black heard this, they immediately turned around and retreated. But how could Zhou Ying and Gu Chengrui be willing to accept this? The two shot out their crossbows simultaneously, instantly killing two more people. When the leader saw this, he turned his head and looked at the couple deeply before running away quickly. Xiaoxiang still wanted to chase after him, but Zhou Ying stopped her. "Don't chase a cornered enemy. Let's search these dead men to see if they have anything to prove their identity. Don't let go of any money on them, and retrieve the arrows too." Xiaoxiang was stunned. Was robbing the dead really a good idea? Shizhu didn't think much about it and immediately followed Zhou Ying's orders. Zhou Ying glanced at the battlefield and found that 6 men in black had died, and Lin Yixin's injuries seemed a little serious. Gu Chengrui was in the midst of helping him stop the bleeding. Zhou Ying immediately ran over. At the same time, she took out a bag of medicine that Gu Chengrui had made and handed it to him. She asked, "How's Lin Yixin's injury? Can he make it to the capital?" "With these herbs, there won't be any problems. We have to leave quickly." Gu Chengrui got busy after taking the medicine. "Good to hear." Zhou Ying turned around and went to their 2 carriages. However, only the carriage that Shizhu and the others were in was intact. At this time, Shizhu and Xiaoxiang had also finished searching the dead bodies. The two of them looked at each other, and Xiaoxiang handed a bag of money to Shizhu. Finally, Shizhu said, "Mistress, we didn't find anything to prove their identity, but we did discover that each of them had a leaf-shaped tattoo on their backs. It's the leaves of a ginkgo tree," Xiaoxiang added. "Also, we collected a total of 100 taels of silver." After Shizhu finished her report, she handed the money to Zhou Ying. I only want the arrows. You two can split the money. Zhouing replied as she took the 6 arrows. Sure, Zhu. I want you to drive the carriage and send us back to the capital. But mistress, no buts. Lin Yixin's injuries are urgent. All right then. Although Shizhu was a little worried, she still followed orders. They all rushed to the capital after that. As for the corpses on the ground, they did not have the energy to deal with them. It was up to their master's conscience whether they were left in the wild or not. Fortunately, the group returned to the capital smoothly. After returning to their residence, Gu Chungrui directly helped Lin Yitianin. He went back to the main courtyard to get his first aid kit and personally bandaged Lin Yixin's wound. Because the wound on his abdomen was too deep, Lin Yitian even had to get stitched up. Chapter 635 Seeking Answers. After treating Lin Yixin's wound, Gu Chungrui said to Qi Feng, "The few of you have to discuss personal arrangements. No matter when, leave one person here to guard Uncle Lin. If he has a fever, remember to come to the main courtyard to find me as soon as possible." I understand, Master. Don't worry, and leave it to us. Do you know what a fever is? I know. It's when the head gets hot and gets dizzy. All right, they'll hand him over to you all. Gu Chungrui then carried his first aid kit back to the main courtyard. Zhouing, who had just finished washing up, saw him coming in and asked, "Rui, is Lin Yitian all right? I've saved his life, but he'll have to recuperate for a few days. If he has a fever, we'll have to do an alcohol rub to cool him down. He'll go to King Rui's residence, but return soon." Zhouing knew he was going to ask about the ginkgo leaf mark. She nodded and replied, "Go, don't worry about us. I know what to do." Gu Chungrui nodded and handed the first aid kit to her. He turned around and walked out without even entering the living room. After she left, Niu Lirong came in with a cup of tea and asked, "Mistress, do you want a cup of chrysanthemum and wolfberry tea?" Zhouing nodded. She placed the first aid kit on the table and asked, "Has your father told you about what has happened in the capital recently?" He mentioned 2 things. One was that Miss Zhou Jiaqing of the Zhou residence had married a medicinal herb merchant from another city. However, my father heard that she did not agree at first. After 2 days of arguing, she finally married him. There was also another matter regarding King Kang's residence. It was said that Consort Kong was pregnant, but she quickly miscarried. It was said that the secondary consort had spiked the consort's chicken soup with some red flowers. However, the secondary consort kept saying that she had been accused and was now grounded in the courtyard by Majesty Kong. As for the exact situation, I'm not too clear either. Anything else? I haven't heard of anything else. All right, you may leave. Help me pass a message to your father. Tell him to be more alert and ask around about the situation outside. Remember, he must be inconspicuous. Don't let anyone find out we are asking around. Is it because of what happened today? Not entirely. In short, the capital has not been peaceful recently. We should be careful. I understand. Niu Lirong affirmed, bowed, and left. On the other end, Gu Chungrui arrived at King Rui's residence and went straight to find Butler Feng. Uncle Feng was surprised when he saw him come in. He asked the servants to leave before personally pouring Gu Chungrui a cup of tea. He whispered, "It's all thanks to Lord Gus' previous reminder. Otherwise, the consort would have been in danger. Uncle Feng, you're too polite. It's good that she's fine." When Gu Chungrui said this, he no longer beat around the bush. Instead, he spoke directly, "Uncle Feng, I won't beat around the bush with you. I came here today to ask you something." Butler Feng saw Gu Shengru's serious expression, so he sat down and asked worriedly, "What is it? Do you know what kind of force a person with a ginkgo leaf on his left waist belongs to? Are they after you?" Butler Feng narrowed his eyes. "Yes, I was ambushed on the way back to the capital today. If we hadn't prepared in advance, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to return. Unfortunately, Lin Yitian was still seriously injured. How is he now?" Butler Feng asked hurriedly. "He's all right and still alive but seriously injured. He'll need at least 3 months to recover." Chapter 636 Invitation into a Trap 1. That's good. The group of people you're talking about is a specialized assassin organization called Ginkgo. According to our investigation, they belong to the Su family. They aren't just assassins. They are also responsible for collecting information from all walks of life. They can be considered pawns of the Su family. Su family? King Kong? Gu Chungrui asked in surprise. He had always thought it was the first prince, or the Marquis of Dingon. He had never thought that it would be King Kang's men. Previously, he had always wanted to rope him in and even sent spies to his side. Could it be that King Kong had always wanted to confuse him and find an opportunity to kill him? Butler Feng looked at his expression and roughly guessed something. He said, otherwise, it could be the scholars are scheming. If loyalty could be measured, the Su family's loyalty to Consort Shu and her son is only 70%. Su Qingxiang, that old fox, is much more sinister than King Kong. He's attacking you now to suppress you and target the imperial residence. Gu Chungrui looked at him with a face full of admiration. Prime Minister Su wanted to use him to stir up King Rui's power in the capital, but he only knew this because Zhouing heard it personally. He did not expect Uncle Feng to be able to analyze this so profoundly. No wonder King Rui dared to let him manage his entire residence. I see. Let's be careful then. I have to go back now. They'll send another team of guards to protect you. There's no need. We won't leave the capital for the time being. You'd better guard yourself. We can't fall into the trap of luring the tiger away from the mountain. If he wants to lure the tiger away from the mountain, why can't we lure him into a trap? Gu Shengrui's eyes lit up when he heard that. I see. Well, listen to your orders then. Let's cooperate on this, Butler Feng said with a smile. After Gu Chungrui returned, Butler Feng immediately sent a team of 50 guards to the Gu residence openly. He later informed the spy, Lung Zi, to send the news over and promised to let him and his family leave immediately. He also sent a team of spies to the streets to monitor the Su residence's every move. On the other end, Gu Chungrui waited for the guards to come over and split them up to patrol the residence. He led the leader into the room and asked, Brother, does Butler Feng have any instructions? Lord Gu is too polite. You can just call me Captain Chu. Captain Chu. Oh, what is your relationship with Guard Chu? He's my cousin. I'm not as skilled as my cousin, so I couldn't join the Imperial Guards. After introducing himself, Guard Chu added, by the way, Uncle Feng's orders are that we will stay here during the day and only half of us at night. The other half will quietly return to the residence. When the time comes, we will have to trouble Lord Gu for your cooperation. I'm afraid it won't be that simple. How about this? You guys stay here and wait for there to be movement. 9 of you will stay at night, but leave all the guards' clothes behind. What do you want to do? Prime Minister Su isn't stupid. He'll definitely investigate in advance of any operation. So I will make some dummies to fool them. I understand. However, we must do it as soon as possible, as they won't wait too long. I will. After that, Gu Chungrui quickly arranged for them to rest in the guest courtyard. After arranging for them to settle down, Gu Chungrui returned to the main courtyard. Seeing that Zhouing was sitting at the table reading a book, he walked over and leaned over to hug her neck. Babe, do me a favor.
Speak.
Help me make some scarecrows as soon as possible, and at least 10 of them. Their arms and legs have to be able to move. Gu Chungrui briefly explained his plan. Chapter 637 Invitation into a Trap 2. I guess you didn't watch the Battle of Red Cliff for nothing? Zhouing turned her head and kissed him, then asked, How much do you need? Prepare a total of 50. If they break, we can replace them in time. All right, leave this to me. At this point, Zhouing turned around and asked, Should we send a message to the Marquis of Dingon through Xiaxiang and get them to join in and deal with them once and for all? Don't. If word gets out, all our previous efforts will be in vain. All right then, but this way, we have to keep a close eye on the people in the residence. They'll arrange it. They'll just need you to make the scarecrows as soon as possible. After Gu Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked out. After he left, Zhouing put away the book and called Kuei Huayan. Using resting as an excuse, she returned to her room and closed the door and windows. She put down the curtains and entered her interspace. After entering, she remembered that there were no straws left. She had no choice but to take out a batch of millet stalks, smash them flat, and tie them into scarecrows with hemp rope. As for the joints of their arms and legs, she used an oilcloth to make the joints and applied some grease to the joints to allow them to move freely. Finally, she used the cheapest linen she had to make a tight-fitting suit. This way, the scarecrows really looked like they were wearing clothes. After she was done, she went to the storeroom to find a batch of fabric closest to the color of flesh and a batch of black silk fabric and made 50 fake headgear. However, she only completed 3 scarecrows in one afternoon. At night, she entered her interspace and finished up all 50 of them with Gu Chungrui. After they were done, Gu Chungrui asked Zhou to put them in the stable. The next day, Captain Chu checked them at dawn and confirmed they could be used. The two then waited quietly for news from the other side. Prime Minister Su was cautious. He sent people to scout for 3 consecutive nights before he made a move. On the afternoon of the 4th day, after receiving the news that they would act, Captain Chu's men secretly left the residence under the guise of selling firewood, transporting vegetables, and so on. Then, they quietly returned to King Rui's residence. Therefore, at night, only 9 guards were left at the Gu residence. When it was time, Gu Chungrui called all the adults in the residence over. He arranged 3 people into a group, and each group brought 2 scarecrows and formed 5 patrol teams to patrol the courtyard. As for the other scarecrows, he placed them in the dormitory as sleeping adults. At night, someone came to check on their residence. Seeing that it was still the same as usual, he heaved a sigh of relief and left. After he left, Zhou informed Gu Chungrui, who was monitoring everything inside and outside the residence. After Gu Chungrui received the news, he heaved a sigh of relief and asked the patrol team to stop. Zhou took out 2 large bags of chili and mustard powder and added alcohol to make them even more pungent. Gu Chungrui handed them to the 9 guards who stayed behind and said, "Take these things with you and use them when they retreat. Be careful." "Lord Gu, we understand. We'll go over now." "Wait, I've already sent someone to keep an eye on them. You guys should only head over when there's movement over there, just in case." "Understood." About 30 minutes later, 200 people forcefully barged into King Rui's residence. Zhou immediately informed Gu Chungrui, and he took his first aid kit and rushed over with the 9 guards. Chapter 638 Invitation into a Trap 3. After Zhou notified Gu Chungrui, she did not withdraw her divine senses. Instead, she kept staring to see if she could help. She did not expect Butler Feng to be so well prepared. Since the invaders entered the second courtyard, all kinds of traps sprung one after another, immediately causing the invaders to panic and turn into lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Of course, the invaders weren't stupid and immediately reacted. They had fallen into an ambush, and the leader quickly led his men and began to retreat. However, there were already archers waiting outside. By the time they got out, more than half had already died. Later, they ran into Gu Chungrui and the others. In the end, only about 20 people were left. In the manner, Butler Feng ordered the dead bodies to be placed on the ground in the front yard and arranged in rows. There were also a few who were captured alive and sent to a locked cell. Butler Feng laughed loudly when he saw Gu Chungrui. "Haha, today's battle is sure satisfying. Indeed. How are the casualties in the residence? I happen to have some medical skills and can help." Gu Chungrui smiled and nodded. "Let's hurry up. There are quite a few injuries. As for those who died, they're still..." Before he could finish, Guard Chu walked over and reported, "Uncle Feng, 6 people are seriously injured and 3 have died. Acceptable losses. Find out their family situation and address, and we'll talk about the specific compensation later." Butler Feng sighed. He turned to Gu Chungrui and said, "Let's hurry up and treat the seriously injured." Gu Chungrui nodded and followed him to the backyard. On the other end, the 20 or so people who had escaped passed through the north gate and escaped the city. Then, they headed straight for a manor. 7th Su, waiting inside, was stunned when he saw their sorry state. He quickly looked behind them. When he saw that there was no one else, he immediately had a bad feeling. He immediately went forward, grabbed the collar of the team leader, and questioned, "What's going on? Why are there only a few of you left? Where are the others?" The information given to us was wrong. We were ambushed, so—" "What? Ambush?" "Yes, after we entered, the place was mostly empty. We didn't pay much attention and just rushed into the backyard. But, after entering the second courtyard, traps sprung one after another. When we retreated, there was even a volley of arrows. Leaving the place, we met another group of people with spicy and choking powder in their hands. We couldn't open our eyes at all, so—" The leader paused momentarily and added, "Oh right, the younger Chu, who was supposed to be guarding the Gu residence, had returned to the residence. Long Zi, that bastard betrayed me. We lost nearly 200 men. I will tear him into pieces." After Su Seventh finished speaking, he immediately sent someone to look for Long Zi's family. However, the building was already empty when his men arrived. Even the people they had left behind to monitor them had been poisoned to death. After Seventh Su received the news, he was so angry that he smashed the small teapot in his hand. "Go, send someone to capture him. Even if you must chase him to the ends of the earth, get him before me. Remember to check on King Rue, Zhou Huaiming, and Consort Ruiz Manor. They definitely can't have gone far." However, he was destined to be disappointed this time. Butler Feng had already thought of this, so he arranged for Long Zi's family to stay in the imperial villa through his connections. After that, he sent their family directly to Dongyang Province, a village near the military camp. Of course, this was a story for the future. The next day, Sun Miaoka and Butler Feng went straight to the palace to complain. The emperor was so furious that he almost fainted. He had just heard about the eldest prince's womenfolk being sterilized, and he didn't expect someone to invade the third prince's residence. Was someone trying to exterminate their family? Chapter 639 Confrontation. After regaining his senses, the emperor asked Eunuchly to invite Prime Minister Su over. When Prime Minister Su came in and saw Butler Feng and Consort Rue, his heart skipped a beat. It seemed that they most likely knew that they were the ones who did what happened last night. He had to be careful with his following words. Thinking of this, he calmly stepped forward and said, "Greetings, Emperor. All right, get up. I ask of you, did you know that King Rui's residence was invaded last night?" "I heard about it in court this morning." The emperor looked at his calm face and cursed inwardly for being an old fox. It seemed it would be difficult to get anything out of his mouth today. Butler Feng said that those people are your subordinates. How do you explain this? "I'm innocent. That is King Rui's residence. Assassinating a member of the imperial family is a great crime that will result in execution for all 9 generations. It's good that you know. I thought you didn't know." "I fear for my innocence." Prime Minister Su hurriedly bowed. "I thought that Prime Minister Su was fearless." After Sun Miaoka finished speaking, she looked at Butler Feng. Butler Feng understood and directly handed him the ginkgo leaf mark he had carved out. "Prime Minister Su, you should be very familiar with this symbol. King Rue has checked that this mark belongs to the ginkgo organization under 7th Su. Impossible. How could my 7th son have hired thugs? He must have been framed." Butler Feng was so angry that he wanted to laugh out loud. At the same time, he had to admire Prime Minister Su's acting skills. He was not inferior to those famous actors at all. However, Butler Feng also knew that it was impossible to do anything with just this bit of evidence in his hands. As long as it served as a warning, Prime Minister Su would not dare casually strike again. The rest could only wait for King Rui's return to be dealt with. Therefore, he could only say, "Since they're not your men, then this old servant doesn't need to worry about saving face. Later on, my servant will throw the 100 over corpses in the manor into the wild to feed the crows." Prime Minister Su was furious, as saving those dumped corpses might blow their cover. They would still suffer heavy losses if they chose to ignore the corpses. What would the people under 7th Su think if he didn't save them? It would definitely greatly reduce 7th Su's prestige in his organization. He have to inform his son as soon as possible and get him to appease his subordinates. Thinking of this, he replied with a fake smile, "That is your right." When Uncle Feng saw this, he immediately retreated to the side. Sun Miaoka stepped forward and bowed, saying, "Imperial Father, your daughter-in-law has troubled you. However, it's easy to dodge an open arrow but hard to guard against a hidden one. I wonder if you can send an experienced nanny for me, as I'm terrified." The emperor was stunned for a moment after hearing this. He had really never seen anyone take the initiative to ask him to arrange for people to enter their residence. However, when he thought about her current situation, he could understand. At least with the people in the palace around, whoever was planning to invade would have some scruples. He nodded and replied, "Sure. They'll give you 2 nannies and 4 guards. They'll return to the palace when King Rui returns." "Thank you, Imperial Father. If you have no other instructions, I will take my leave. Go, rest well. When you have time, go to the Empress Dowager's place and talk to her."
Yes.
After Sun Miul finished speaking, she nodded to Prime Minister Su expressionlessly and left with Butler Feng. The emperor then said to Prime Minister Su, "Prime Minister Su, you may leave as well. I hope that this matter has nothing to do with you." "I will humbly take my leave," Prime Minister Su responded, bowed, and left. After leaving, his expression changed as he strode out of the palace. In the royal study, the emperor called Xiao Hong and said, "Xiao Hong, do you know about the assassin organization called Ginkgo?" Chapter 640 Temporary Peace. I heard Kingen mention that 5 years ago, a family of 4 was killed when they went to the national temple to offer incense. This organization did it. However, because there were too few clues, they had yet to find the person behind the scenes. A family of 4. What does that family do? Merchants in the wood and bamboo business. Investigate 7th Su and see what he has done in secret. Also, keep an eye on my 4th son and the Prime Minister's estate. Remember to be careful and not alert the enemy." When the emperor said this, he pondered Butler Feng's accusation and asked, "By the way, is 7th Su in the capital?" "He should be. I heard that 7th Master Su was struck by lightning in King Kang's residence some time ago." "He was struck by lightning? When did this happen?" the emperor asked. "It was around when King Kang's young daughter was a month old. He should be almost fully recovered by now." The emperor's eyes narrowed after hearing this, as it was the middle of winter. It was impossible for thunder to strike in the middle of winter, so it meant Mother God did this. 7th Su must have done a lot of sinful things. He then remembered how the 1st and 4th princes had forcefully replaced the officials under them. The 4th prince had always been in the capital, while 7th Su had been traveling all year round under the pretext of doing business. So, he instructed, "Investigate 7th Su properly."
Yes.
Xiao Hong responded and left. After Butler Feng returned to the residence, he wrote a letter to King Rui and told him everything that had happened recently. After that, he had people deal with the corpses and transport them to the barren mountains outside the city. He also sent 2 people to guard the bodies nearby. Naturally, Prime Minister Su did not stay idle. After leaving the palace, he immediately sent someone to call 7th Su back. He told his son how Butler Feng was confronting them and told him to calm his subordinates down for the time being. After that, the capital temporarily regained its stability. There was also good news that came soon. Grain merchants had shipped over a new batch of rice from the south and a relatively small amount of sweet potatoes. Although the price was more than 10 times more expensive, it was fine if these batches of rice were used as seeds. Coincidentally, there were still about 100 acres of empty paddy fields in her manor. Zhouing bought these rice seeds for her paddy fields while transferring some sweet potatoes to her newly built manor. After confirming that the country was celebrating the Dragon Boat Festival in May, Zhouing also bought a batch of glutinous rice and dumpling leaves from the grain merchant. She also took the opportunity to take out another batch from her inner space and distribute it to Qingshui town. After that, she started cleaning up her restaurant in the capital. She found an opportunity to take out a large number of fresh dates, candied dates, beans, salted duck eggs, fresh meat, and cured meat from her inner space. She began to wrap dumplings of different flavors, and sell them as a prelude to the opening of her new restaurant. Perhaps it was because of the fresh taste that business was going great, especially in the wealthy circles of the East and West City. All dumplings were fully booked until the day before the Dragon Boat Festival. At noon during the Dragon Boat Festival, Nyofuguwe walked into the main courtyard with an account book and reported, "Madam, all the accounts are done." "Oh, from your expression, I know we've earned a lot in the past half-month." "Yes, including the gifts we gave out, we sold another 200,000 dumplings, earning a net profit of 5,600 taels of silver. It would be ideal if we could do this once a year as an easy way to supplement our coffers. It's selling well because salty dumplings are a new flavor profile everyone wants to try. This is the reason we can raise the price. We might not be able to earn so much in the future, but maybe we can give it a try when our restaurant opens up. Good work to everyone. I bought 2 sheep in the morning, and we'll have a barbecue for dinner tonight." Chapter 641 Planning. Thank you, mistress. I will bring in the silver we earned in a while. There's no need since the grain merchants are coming over. We will be renovating our restaurant, too, and I'll leave this matter to you. Remember to record the accounts clearly. Also, the materials you purchase must be durable. They'll give you the blueprints later, and you can renovate the restaurant according to them. Understood. I will take my leave then. Nyofuguwe turned around and walked out. After he left, Zhouing took out her calculator and calculated carefully. After confirming that the amount matched, she put the account book aside. After lunch, she went to the kitchen, leading everyone to prepare mutton skewers. When Gu Chungrui returned that evening, everyone had a good time at dinner. After the barbecue, Zhouing asked Biaozi, who was handling the grill, "Brother Biaozi, we will mainly be having skewers and chilled dishes during the summer, so you can prepare accordingly for our meals. Also, our restaurant will open in a month, at most." "Really? That's great. Don't worry, leave it to me. By the way, you have to nurture a disciple as soon as possible. Otherwise, you won't be able to handle the workload." "Understood. Mistress, my father alone can handle keeping the account books in the residence. When the restaurant opens, can I come to the restaurant?" Nyo Deli asked. "Sure, you can try if you want to, but you and your father must make arrangements at the residence. If anything goes wrong, they'll look for you." "Mistress, don't worry. If we get too busy, they'll definitely call him back," Nyofuguwe affirmed. Next, Zhouing asked Mother Chio to teach Haiteng cooking before leaving with Gu Chungrui. After entering her interspace at night, Zhouing asked, "Rue, is the water wheel on the new manor installed?" "Yes, and it's already running. We've also dug a 10-acre reservoir in the livestock breeding area and plan to raise more ducks and geese. It will not only enhance the safety of the manor, but roast duck and iron pot stewed goose are also rare delicacies. They could be used as our new restaurant's signature dishes if done well." "All right, as long as there's no influenza, it should be fine. Don't worry, I've already taught them how to prevent a breakout," Gu Chungrui assured her. "Oh, don't you want to return to our hometown? Let's head back the day after tomorrow. It just so happens that the chili and cumin are almost ready for harvest. We can transport some over instead of buying them here. If there is also an excess of livestock at our hometown's manor, we can also transport some over. That's a possible solution. Li Si and the others can also be promoted to a more important position by bringing them to the capital." After the couple finished their planning, they went ahead and got busy. Zhouing didn't pack too much because she planned to take a boat back this time. It would be much faster to travel by water. She gave Nyofuguwe some important instructions and left 5,000 taels of silver just in case. Gu Chungrui went to the academy to let Gu Chunglin know of his departure, and he was surprised when Gu Chunglin requested to return with him. When the two of them went to bid farewell to Gu Wanning's eyes lit up. "I'll go with you. I've never been out of the capital before. I could also go back and visit grandmother."
No.
Gu Chungrui rejected her directly. When she saw that she was dejected, he quickly explained, "Don't think the capital is as peaceful as it looks. The conflict has just gone underground. If you leave the capital now, you'll just be heading into an early grave. We don't want to bring along a big target too." After Gu Wanning heard this, She quickly remembered that someone had tried to sabotage her and the princess consort several times, as well as the recent invasion. She kept quiet after that. When Gu Chungrui saw this, he gave her a few instructions and told her not to go out as much as possible before bringing Gu Qinglin and his servant home. Chapter 642, Another Ambush the next morning. The couple took Gu Qinglin along and hired a carriage to the dock. When they passed by a mountain, more than 30 people suddenly rushed out of the mountain. Each of them looked fierce, like bandits. The coachman was frightened and immediately stopped the carriage. He carefully cupped his fists and said, "Gentlemen, please let us pass." "Pass? There's no way that's possible. If you don't want to die, get lost." The leader shook the large sword in his hand and said, "Yes, yes. This lowly one will scram now." The coachman hurriedly replied and turned around to leave. However, just as he turned the carriage around, someone stopped him and said, "Stop. Leave the carriage." When the coachman saw this, he was so frightened that he immediately ran away. Gu Chungrui walked out at this moment. He saw the crowd surrounding him and said, "Brothers, this is 100 taels of silver. Please do me a favor and let us go." "Kid, you're on the right track, but we want money and your lives. I'm afraid you won't be able to make it out today. Seeing how you let the coachman go just now, I don't think you're some evil person. I wonder if you can let us die painlessly. You're smart, kid. No wonder people think you're a hindrance. However, we're being paid to help someone eliminate their problems." After the leader finished speaking, he raised his sword and slashed at Gu Chungrui. When Gu Chungrui saw this, he quickly ran off the horse's back. At the same time, he sprinkled a packet of knockout powder in his hand. "Shit! Retreat!" the leader shouted. At the same time, Zhouing knew that they couldn't avoid this fight. She immediately took out a packet of knockout powder and knocked out Gu Qinglin, trembling in fear, before throwing him into her interspace. She quickly took out 2 flintlocks with iron beads as bullets and a large bag of tear gas powder. After putting on a mask, she promptly left the carriage. She threw the bag of tear gas powder in front of the most people, which was also diagonally above Gu Chungrui, and fired a shot. The powder scattered in all directions. Gu Chungrui was shocked by this. He immediately covered his nose before dodging to one side. The people below were all sneezing nonstop, unable to open their eyes. Gu Chungrui took the opportunity to snatch a sword and quickly slashed at a person who was still sneezing. The other men forcefully tried to slash Gu Chungrui. Zhouing immediately stepped forward to stop them. She shot the gun in her hand, explicitly aiming at their eyes. If she couldn't hit their eyes at the very least, she would hit their heads. No matter where she hit, it made these people cry out in pain. Chapter 643, King Rui. Wounded soon, a group of cavalrymen ran over. The bandits were so scared that they immediately ran up the mountain when they saw this. However, Gu Chungrui and Zhouing did not want to let them go. At the very least, they had to know who the person behind them was. Otherwise, they would be unable to live a peaceful life if someone were after them daily. Therefore, the two tried their best to attack their legs to stop these bandits from running away. When the cavalry arrived, some bandits had already run into the mountains. When the cavalry saw Zhou Ying and her husband, they were stunned momentarily. They immediately shot an arrow and killed the bandit running in front. Soon, the bandits fell to the ground one by one. The couple stopped attacking and looked at the 20 or so cavalrymen in surprise. When an officer leading the cavalry was about to shoot the bandit leader, Gu Chungrui hurriedly shouted, "Officer, please show mercy." After shouting, he stepped forward and kicked the leader's back, forcing him to crawl on his back. Seeing this, the leading cavalryman also put away his bow and arrows. He dismounted and saluted. "Zhang Ping greets Lord Gu." "Zhang Ping, are you General Zhang? Aren't you guys supposed to be in Dongyang?" "Why?" Gu Chungrui stepped forward and sized him up seriously. After confirming that he was an acquaintance, he heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "We came to invite you and treat His Highness injuries. I didn't expect to meet you here." His Highness is injured? Is it very serious? Yes, His Highness is seriously injured. King Rui is resting in an inn at the dock. Zhang Ping glanced at the bandits on the ground and asked, "Who are these people?" "I'm not sure. How about this? The two of us will go and take a look at His Highness first. Help me deal with these people. If they honestly confess the person behind the scenes, spare their lives. Otherwise, they'll leave it to you to handle." "All right, they'll send half of my men to send you there. Leave the matters here to me." Zhang Ping nodded in agreement. His Highness couldn't wait any longer, so it was better to let them go ahead. He pointed out a few people and instructed, "Escort Dr. Gu and his wife over and protect them with your lives." "Yes, General Zhang, thank you." Gu Chungrui cupped his fists and thanked Zhang Ping. Afterward, he nodded at Zhou Ying, and they entered the carriage. Just as Zhou Ying was about to retreat into the carriage, the man whose eyes were blown out by Zhou Ying suddenly stood up and slashed at Zhou Ying with his knife. After Zhou Ying detected his abnormality through her divine sense, she directly shot at his other eye. The man knew how scary the gun was and immediately turned his head to dodge. At this moment, Gu Chungrui rushed over and stabbed his heart. He exerted a great force, and the wound on his arm bled again. When Zhou Ying saw this, she immediately got into the car and let Gu Chunlin out. At the same time, she took out her first aid kit. She quickly and carefully bandaged Gu Shengru's wound. Then, the two rushed to the dock under the escort of the cavalry. At the same time, Zhou Ying quickly filled up the first aid kit with medicine and bandages needed for suturing and bandaging. If King Rui's injuries weren't serious, Zhang Ping would not have rushed to the capital to look for them. After arriving at the pier, Zhou Ying realized that the pier in the capital suburbs was really bustling. There were long lines of boats waiting to dock, and there were also the sounds of boat trackers shouting in unison amidst the hawkers coming and going. It was a lively dock. However, Zhou Ying only took a glance before the carriage quickly passed by. It was better to wait until the safety of King Rui was confirmed before she explored the place. Chapter 644 Treatment. As soon as they reached the entrance of the inn, Zhou Huaiming rushed over. When he saw Gu Shengru's injured arm, he was shocked and asked, "What happened? Can you still?" "It's fine. I've already bandaged it. We better quickly take a look at my brother-in-law's injury." Gu Chungrui answered and turned his head to ask Zhou Ying for the first aid kit before hurrying inside. Zhou Huaiming immediately followed him and led the way. Zhou Ying exited the carriage a moment later with Gu Chunlin in her arms. She handed him to a cavalryman and said, "Sorry to trouble you. He just fainted from fear." "It's my duty. Follow me." The cavalryman replied and took Gu Chunlin before leading her into the inn. Zhou Ying carried her luggage and followed him inside. The cavalryman arranged for them to stay in a room on the east side of the second floor and retreated. After settling down, Zhou Ying saw that there was water in the room. She washed up briefly, then sat on a stool and spread out her divine sense to scan the entire inn. Soon, she found King Rui in the main room in the backyard. At this moment, Gu Chungrui was examining the wounds of the unconscious King Rui. The injuries on his body were not serious. They were all superficial injuries and had been treated perfectly. However, there was an arrow in King Rui's chest, which was especially close to his heart. If it was pulled out forcefully, it was very likely that he would not be able to survive the bleed. This was presumably also why Zhou Huaiming had looked for Gu Chungrui. After Gu Chungrui finished checking, Zhou Huaiming immediately asked, "Chungrui, how confident are you?" 50%, but I need Zhou Ying to help me. 50%. Zhou Huaiming's heart sank when he heard this, but he also knew this might be the best possible outcome. After all, even Dr. He, known as the saint of external injuries, could not do anything about it. He hesitated for a moment and replied, "Do your best. If you need anything else or have any requirements, just tell me." "Hot water. We can start when Zhou Ying comes, but we can't be disturbed in the middle of our treatment. No matter the situation, you mustn't let anyone in." "I understand. Get ready. They'll call Zhou Ying over now." Zhou Huaiming nodded and turned around before running out of the room. Gu Chungrui made some simple preparations. Of course, the main thing was to disinfect himself. Soon, Zhou rushed over. After the hot water was brought in, Gu Chungrui gave Zhou Huaiming a few instructions before closing the door and locking it from the inside. He asked Zhou for some local anesthesia. After giving King Rue a skin test and confirming there were no adverse reactions, he injected King Rue with a suitable amount of anesthetic. Once King Rue slept, Zhou brought him directly to the small operating theater in her inner spaces villa. The two changed into surgical gowns. Gu Chungrui was the chief surgeon, and Zhou Ying was the assistant. In less than 15 minutes, Gu Chungrui quickly removed the hooked arrow. After some sutures, he gave King Rue a tube of painkiller and antiseptic medicine. Once they were done, the two changed out of their surgical gowns. Zhou went outside her inner space and sprayed a lot of disinfectant before moving King Rue out of the operation theater. Gu Chungrui took the arrow, the blood-stained cotton wool, and the bandages used during the surgery. He threw them into the hot water he had prepared and stirred them. He only stopped when they were all blood-red. After he was done with his work, Gu Chungrui glanced around the room. He removed the bedsheet Zhou had changed earlier and dug a fist-sized hole in the middle. He used the blood water to draw out traces of blood that should have spurted out when pulling out the arrow. At this thought, he splashed some blood on his body and face. Finally, he wiped his hands with the sheet and asked Zhou to open the door. Chapter 645. The reason. As soon as the door opened, Zhou Weiming's head appeared in front of Zhou Ying as he asked anxiously, "Sister Zhou, what's going on? Why isn't there any movement at all? What do you want?" Zhou Ying was surprised by his sudden appearance and asked, "Even though His Highness is unconscious now, he should still cry out in pain when pulling out an arrow. Rue used anesthesia, so it shouldn't hurt. Besides, the arrow wasn't pulled out by force. We cut open the wound and took it out gently." Zhou Huaiming was stunned by her reply before he went forward to check. The arrow in King Rui's chest was gone. Besides his pale face, he didn't seem to be in any discomfort. He reached out and touched King Rui's forehead. After confirming that he still had a low fever, he turned his head and asked, "Brother Gu, when will this fever go down? If it continues, would it cause more problems?" "The fever is caused by the arrow that was left in the body. It's normal. Now that the arrow is out, the fever should retreat in about 4 hours." "Really? That's great. You don't know how worried I've been for the past 2 days." Zhou Huaiming choked up and couldn't continue. Because he knew very well that once King Rue died, the Zhou family would definitely not end well. In fact, a large number of people related to them would even die. The pressure he was under was far too great. It was so pressuring that he could not breathe well for the past 2 days. "Don't worry, he's not in any danger anymore." Gu Chungrui then asked, "By the way, His Highness is quite skilled and also has guard Chu protecting him. How did he get such a serious injury? Do you know who did it?" "Oh right. Where's guard Chu?" "Guard Chu is also heavily injured and is staying in Dongyang." Zhou Huaiming glanced at King Rue and asked, "Do you still remember his residence being forcefully barged some time ago?" "Of course, I remember. I even participated in it." After His Highness received the news, he submitted a memorial to the Emperor. After obtaining the Emperor's permission, he hurried back. Who would have thought that the East Continent would cause trouble at this time? His Highness personally led his troops to attack and won a complete victory in the end. However, a few people from the East Continent managed to sneak onto our boat, and both Guard Chu and His Highness were seriously injured. No one dared to pull out the arrow stuck on His Highness. I remembered you're great at suturing wounds, so I immediately wanted to bring you here. Are you sure it's not a trap? It shouldn't be. Their losses are too heavy." Zhou Huaiming replied thoughtfully. Gu Chungrui did not say anything else after hearing that. He turned to Zhou Ying and said, "Ying, you must be tired. Go and rest." "I'm afraid I'll have to stay here all night." "All right, if you need help, come and find me." Zhou Ying replied and turned around. heading back to her room upstairs. Meanwhile, Zhou Huiming immediately sent someone in to clean up the blood. He also asked Gu Chengrui about the recent events in the capital. At noon, Gu Chenglin woke up. He was stunned when he saw the furnishings in the room before remembering what had happened before he fainted and sat up immediately. Zhou was sitting at the table, reading a book while eating pastries. Gu Chenglin went forward and asked, "Cousin-in-law, where are we? Why are we here?" "This is an inn." Zhou then briefly told him what happened after he fainted. "What? Brother-in-law was injured? Is he unconscious?" "No, I have to go and take a look. Your cousin is guarding the prince, and you should stay here obediently. You can go over when he wakes up." Zhou quickly grabbed him and stopped him. Gu Chenglin hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he sat back down. It was useless for him to go over now, and he might even cause trouble. Thinking of this, he recalled getting knocked out. He looked at Zhou and asked with an aggrieved expression, "Cousin-in-law, why did you knock me out back there?" Chapter 646, The Person Behind the Scenes. What else could I have done? Looking at you trembling in fear, I was afraid that something terrible would happen to you. So I had to knock you out. Besides, if you don't scream, they won't touch you before they kill us too. Gu Chenglin thought of his previous cowardly look and stammered, not knowing what to say. "No, I must learn martial arts to protect myself in the future. Of course. You can learn from your cousin or Lin Tian when you go home during the holidays." "I understand." Gu Chenglin nodded, and his stomach began to rumble. Zhou smiled and got up. "Let's go eat something." After saying that, she brought him out of the house and pointed to the house opposite. "This house belongs to your cousin and me. If you need anything tonight, remember to come and find us." "You'll sleep alone tonight? What else? You're already 13 and not young anymore." "What? I'm just afraid that I'm wasting such a huge space." Zhou smiled at his sheepish appearance, but she did not expose him. As soon as she went downstairs, Zhou Huiming came over with a lunchbox and said, "You came down just in time. We've booked this entire inn, so order whatever you want to eat for free." "All right, you go ahead with your job." Zhou then brought Gu Chenglin to the kitchen. The rice was served in the kitchen with 2 meat dishes and 2 vegetables. It was chicken stewed with mushrooms, but there was very little chicken, and most of it was mushrooms. The other meat dish was braised fish, about 2 pounds per fish. It was quite good. The vegetable dishes were cold spinach, garlic, and coal. "The 2 of you will each have a portion of rice, 1 meat, and 1 vegetable." The manager, who had heard Zhou Weiming's words, reminded them, "Since there's only the 2 of us, we'll have 2 servings of rice with a serving of each dish." "Wait a moment," a shop assistant replied. He took out 2 trays, prepared the plates and bowls, and quickly scooped them up. Looking at the amount he scooped, Zhou quickly thought of a school cafeteria. Usually, she wanted a spoonful of everything. The 2 did not return to the house. Instead, they brought the food to the table at the side and started eating. At this time, the manager also informed the people brought by King Rui that it was time for dinner. After dinner, Zhou brought Gu Chenglin out for a walk. They rapidly returned since, aside from a few hawkers selling food, it was mostly taverns and restaurants, and food was not sold separately. Most of the items in the area were commodities that come and go in carts, too. In the evening, King Rui finally woke up, and his fever had temporarily subsided. Chapter 647, A Life of Extravagance. Don't worry, everything has been dealt with. They won't find trouble with you anymore. Zhang Ping nodded with a smile. Of course, he would not kill the innocent. He had thoroughly interrogated these people. To put it bluntly, they were a group of bandits who robbed and killed. Their ruthlessness has harmed many people over the past few years. It just so happened that the people from the Liu family were looking for someone to deal with the Gu couple, so they found them and arranged for them to come over. How did the Liu family get the news that we were leaving the capital? Did they mention this? Zhou asked thoughtfully. Could Xia Xiang have leaked the news? But she had not gone out these few days. Or was there another spy in the residence that she had not discovered? Well, I don't know about this. They only said that they were following orders. Zhang Ping shook his head. It must be hard on you today, General Zhang. We will treat you to a big meal when we return to the capital. Gu Chengrui said. All right, they'll remember that. I have to report to General Xiangzhou. See you later. All right, let's talk later. Gu Chengrui sent him out after he finished speaking. Later, the couple took Gu Chenglin out for a meal. When they saw that a restaurant had pigeon soup on the menu, Gu Chengrui bought a portion for himself and packed another portion to go. He handed the soup to King Rue and left. When Gu Chenglin was about to return to his room, Zhouing asked, Do you need someone to accompany you? No need. Am not afraid. Gu Chenglin paused momentarily, blushed, and immediately shook his head. He pushed his door open and walked in. Seeing this, Zhouing smiled and did not say anything else. Instead, she turned around and went back into her house. Gu Chengrui followed them in and asked curiously, What do you mean? Is Gu Chenglin afraid of sleeping alone? I think he was just scared by what happened today, so he's a little timid. Gu Chengrui recalled the scene and immediately understood his feelings. Gu Chenglin was a child who had never seen blood. He would inevitably be afraid after witnessing such a bloody scene. He had to give him some guidance as soon as possible, or it would leave him with psychological trauma. He spoke out, You go ahead and rest. They'll go and accompany him. All right, they'll go back to the inner space and see what's going on with the Liu family. Let's meet up after this. Come and pick me up at midnight. Gu Chengrui then went straight to the next room, but only after locking the door from the inside. Meanwhile, Zhouing entered her interspace and found the marquee of Dingon residence through a mother god temple. Finally, she fixed her gaze on Mrs. Liu. Chapter 648. Just you watch, mistress. Please punish me. I messed up this mission. Magu kneeled after saying that. What's going on? 30 men can't even overcome 2 people? Mrs. Liu immediately sat up and asked. Someone saved them. I heard from the coachman who escaped that the bandits had already encircled them, and Gu Chengrui was injured. They just needed some time, and those 2 would definitely be beaten to death. However, a group of cavalrymen suddenly came and shot several of them to death. In addition, they came forward to help. So, cavalry? Do you know who they are? Mrs. Liu's eyes narrowed. I'm not sure. The coachman was far away then and didn't hear what they said, but the couple and the cavalry seemed to know each other. After that, the husband and wife rushed to the dock under the escort of half of the cavalry. After interrogating the rest, they were all killed and buried nearby. Interrogate them? Do they know your identity? I don't think so. I was wearing a bamboo hat when I went to look for them. Hurry up and execute that, coachman. Remember not to leak this to anyone. If my guess is correct, those cavalrymen are King Rui's men. If he finds out, he will definitely make a big fuss about this matter. At that time, the Empress and the first prince will be implicated, and even my husband will not be able to protect us. Yes, I will arrange it now. Magu bowed before returning to the small door. As soon as she left, Mrs. Liu's expression turned extremely ugly. She gritted her teeth and cursed, I don't believe you can be saved every time. After saying that, she arranged the blankets on her bed, making it look like someone was sleeping. Then, she put on her clothes and entered the small door. Seeing this, Zhouing followed curiously. She found that there was a tunnel inside, and it was divided into 2 roads after leaving the residence. Mrs. Liu went left, while Magu went right. The tunnel on the left soon led to an exquisite courtyard. Zhouing did not expect it to lead to an ancestral hall. Inside, there were 2 rows of ancestral tablets of the Liu family. From the way it was addressed, they were all her close relatives. Mrs. Liu lit 3 incense sticks and said, Father, Mother, Big Brother, although I didn't kill them to avenge you this time, I swear here that I will avenge you all in my lifetime. After saying that, She cried and sobbed for a while before turning around and heading back to her room. Looking at her heavy footsteps, Zhou did not know whether to hate or pity her. Honestly, it was heartbreaking for her when her family, who had supported her for many years, was suddenly destroyed. However, a pitiful person must have something hateful about them. They would not have ended up getting destroyed if they had not done so many bad things and tried to assassinate King Rui. Therefore, this could only be said to be her retribution. After that, Zhou looked around the small courtyard and quickly found a basement under the table where the memorial tablets were placed. The things inside really surprised Zhou. About 20 boxes of antiques, calligraphy, paintings, and jewelry were there. Although each box was only 10 liters, it was still quite a treasure. There was also a small pile of gold ingots, along with 20 boxes of silver ingots. This was about 3 times more than young Shirching had at that time. She was only the concubine. How many more treasures were there in the entire Marquis Dingon residence? Thinking of this, she did not alert the enemy by taking the treasures. After retreating, she quickly followed Magu into a small courtyard, which was much more dilapidated. Chapter 649 Annoyance. This was not an empty house. Instead, a family of 5 lived here, but Magu was nowhere to be seen. Zhou quickly went over and saw Magu leading a young man to the door of the coachman's house. After Magu climbed over the wall and entered, she blew some knockout powder into the room. She walked into the room a moment later, knocked over the oil lamp by the bed, and ran out quickly. After leaving the house, Magu took out 2 silver notes worth 1,000 taels and handed them to the young man. Xiaosu, you are the only child in our family. Tomorrow, take the silver notes and leave the capital. Also, find a place to change your appearance. The Marquis Dingon residence would probably not last long. But Annie, no buts. I'm already old and don't care about life and death anymore. Moreover, my hands have been stained with blood all these years. It's time for me to atone for my sins. But you're different. I've never let your hands get stained with blood, and you can totally start a new life. New Jersey 11, you are my weakness. Do you understand? The young man was stunned for a moment before nodding heavily. Take care, Auntie. Remember, after you leave, don't ever come back. All right. The young man nodded and turned away in a hurry. However, he looked back at Magu several times with every step he took. He only ran away after Magu had walked far away without looking back. Through Magu and the others, Zhou also learned that the family of 5 living in the small courtyard was also from the Marquis residence. Moreover, an old lady there was also one of the old madam's nannies. To put it bluntly, their family was responsible for protecting this tunnel. Zhou watched Magu disappear into the tunnel. This time, she did not chase after her, but she felt that this Magu was not an unpardonable person. Magu definitely knew a lot of insider information. Zhou could even get rid of Mrs. Liu through her, as it was annoying to guard against someone constantly scheming against them. Zhou quickly returned to the coachman's tiny house. At this time, the flames were already soaring into the sky, and the rafters and beams on the roof had also begun to fall. The coachman who was about to be burned alive was unconscious. Zhou hesitated momentarily before throwing the coachman out through the back window. Perhaps he would even bite the old lady back for the sake of his survival. After that, she inspected the entire continent through the various mother god temples. Finally, she turned her view to the military camp in Dongyang province in the East continent. At this moment, Dongyang's military camp was relatively peaceful. However, many injured soldiers could not receive timely treatment due to the lack of medicinal herbs. When Zhou saw this, she immediately threw them a batch of medicinal herbs that they urgently needed. As for the East continent, they suffered heavy losses. They were divided into 2 factions. One faction requested to send more troops to strike while the iron was hot, while the other faction stated a massive strength disparity between the 2 sides. Moreover, they had already lost the opportunity and should not send more troops to die. Zhouing ignored their arguments and instead learned the reason why they invaded. Zhouing was momentarily speechless after she learned that they were troubled by the lack of land and mountains in the East Continent, and that there was no grain surplus each year. Thus, they were attracted to the Ming dynasty's land and resources. The problem was that the people of the East Continent had the lowest rate of pious belief in Mother God. How could she give them food for free? At the thought of this, she found the highest official of the main Union sect, who was also a loyal believer in Mother God, and gave him a dream. However, there were no specific instructions. Instead, it was a dream of cows and sheep filling the mountains, fruit trees filling the gardens, and chickens and ducks walking everywhere. It was a dream of using animal feces to raise earthworms and then feeding these earthworms to raise chickens and ducks. As long as they used their existing resources to do an excellent job breeding livestock, they could completely solve the East Continent's food shortage problem. Chapter 650. Try it. When the official woke up and remembered his dream the next day, he was extremely excited. However, his excitement soon withered because he needed some food to start this project. Moreover, it was easy for these livestock to get sick if they were bred in large quantities. If an epidemic appeared, all the efforts would be in vain. His wife, who was sitting beside him, saw him sighing. She sat up and asked curiously, "What's wrong? Is there something bothering you?" The official told her about his dream and troubles. She was stunned for a moment and smiled. "You're so talented. You can think of such a wonderful method." The official looked at her in confusion. "You must have toiled through this problem day and night before finding your answer through a dream. Isn't that the case?" The official was surprised. Although he really wanted to acknowledge this credit, he had to admit that he had never thought of this before. But why did he have this dream? No matter how much he thought about it, he could not understand the reason behind it. He didn't even have anything to do with livestock breeding to begin with. His wife looked at his puzzled expression and asked thoughtfully, "Could it be that Mother God sent a message to you in your dream?" After the people who went on the expedition returned, didn't they say that there had already been several cases of Mother God manifesting in the Ming dynasty? Really? Try it. The day after tomorrow is when you go to the Mother Temple to offer prayers. You can explain the difficulties to Mother God in detail. The official nodded. However, he felt he should inform the king, as it was related to the people's livelihoods on the East Continent. If the king took it to heart, he would do his best to assist. Otherwise, he would have no choice but to start this new movement himself. After all, his head might be in danger if he aroused the king's suspicion. On the other end, Zhouing brought Gu Chengrui into her inner space and asked, "Was Chenglin all right?" "He's all right. Because of Gu Wanning, he's destined to be unable to live a stable life. He has to adapt as soon as possible. You'd better ask Lin Tian and the others to teach him some martial arts." After Zhouing finished speaking, she told him about her night visit to the Marquis Dingon residence. "Mrs. Liu is just an old lady who only picks the weak ones. This time, she has targeted us as her prey. That's normal. She knows that, with her ability, she can't touch King Rue. Moreover, the Empress and King Hui were still leading their movement. It's better for her to watch from the side. By the way, did you tell the coachman about this in his dreams?" Gu Chengrui asked. "There's no need to make it so obvious. He should be able to guess the reason for the fire." "It's better to be more obvious. What if he's out of his mind and thinks we did it?" Gu Chengrui paused for a moment and sneered. "I originally felt quite guilty that I had dragged him down and almost caused him to lose his life. Now, it seemed that he had asked for it. All right, we'll go to his dream now." Zhouing nodded and sent a dream to the coachman through her interspace. Well, to be precise, she made up a dream and planted it inside him. In the dream, the coachman would vaguely notice Magu enter his room and knock over the oil lamp by his bed. After realizing something was wrong, he climbed out of the back window. This way, he wouldn't know someone had saved him when he woke up. He could also lock onto Magu and Mrs. Liu for revenge. However, She remembered what Magu had said and placed a safety talisman on her body. Zhouing would be the first to know and save her if her life was in danger. Chapter 651. Dissuading. After Zhouing finished all this, the corn she had planted earlier had ripened. Zhouing harvested them all and placed them in the drying area. At the same time, she placed 4 of the more tender corn cobs in her oven to roast them, while the rest were stored in the warehouse. She planted the emptied fields with half peanuts and half sesame seeds. After she was done, the tender roast corn was ready. As soon as it was out of the oven, Gu Chungrui walked in with a giant watermelon in his arms. Yo, roasted corn. We've been here for 4 years, but this is our first time eating some. This time, I kept some more corn in our storage. If you want to eat some, just let me know. Got it. The corn is still hot, so let's eat a slice of watermelon first. Go wash your hands. I'll get the knife. After Zhouing finished speaking, she turned around and took a fruit knife to slice the watermelon. After the watermelon was sliced, Gu Chungrui rushed back. The couple sat on their chairs and did not want to move after they finished an entire watermelon and 4 roasted corns. A moment later, Gu Chungrui got up and pulled her up. Let's go. We'll take a walk, and the watermelons will digest soon. The couple went around the mountain for a walk. Zhouing found that the cherries and lychees on the mountain were almost ripe, so she got busy harvesting a batch of fruits. After they were done, the 2 of them went out of the inner space to sleep. The next day, after Gu Chungrui woke up, he went to take a look at Gu Chenglin. Seeing that he was sleeping soundly, Gu Chungrui did not disturb him and returned home. After washing up and enjoying their breakfast, Zhouing took some rice, water, and snakehead fish in her interspace to make a small pot of black fish porridge. She packed it and handed it to Gu Chungrui before taking the rest for Gu Chenglin. Meanwhile, Gu Chungrui carried his lunchbox and went to visit King Rui. Seeing that doctor he had just finished examining King Rui's wound, Gu Chungrui went forward and asked, "How's His Highness? Has the fever subsided?" "There's still a slight fever, but the wound is starting to heal. He'll be fine after 2 or 3 days of rest." Doctor He looked at the lunchbox in his hand and said, "Since Lord Gu is here, then it's your turn to keep watch. This old man will need his meal." "Okay, you go ahead." Gu Chungrui nodded and made way for him. After Doctor He left, Gu Chungrui saw that King Rui was awake and in good spirits. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I asked Zhouing to cook some fish porridge. It's good for your body." "I have troubled you, cousin." King Rui nodded. Gu Chungrui was stunned for a moment when he heard him call him cousin. He opened the lunchbox and scooped a bowl of porridge for him. Then, he leaned King Rui up on his bed and fed him 2 servings of porridge. After eating his fill, King Rui was obviously in better spirits. After lying back down, he asked directly, "What do you plan to do with the Liu family? Do you need me to take action?" "There's no need for that. King Hui is already in a terrible situation. If you make a move now, he might lash out in panic. Let us deal with it ourselves." "All right, if you have any difficulties, remember to let me know." "Oh right, I heard you want to return to your hometown. Now that King Hui and King Kong have their eyes on you, once you leave, it's hard to say if you can return or not. Moreover, Uncle Liu and County Magistrate's son are there, so your family should not be in danger. If you have anything to do, you can write a letter back. They will help you get it done." Gu Chungrui hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. Although it would be a little dangerous if it were just the 2 of them, it would not be a big deal. At most, they would hide in Zhou Ying's inner space. However, Gu Chenglin was following them, and they had to be mindful of their family in the village. He did not dare to take the risk. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.